Good morning and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. Welcome, Merrylin, LeBlanc.
And welcome to you too, Michael Bartlett. Here we are again on a Tuesday morning in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Not living too many miles apart, but...
No, we never really are too many miles apart, but the way the roads go, I think it makes it take a little longer. And I don't know, Santa Fe, I don't know, like it kind of leads into like, I think the topic would be fun to have today, but people come to Santa Fe because they think it's this great place. They're going to be transformed and, the city different. It's called, for the city. And it is that way. But, what's around most homes around here are walls, very high walls.
In the older part of town, yes.
Even out here where I live, out here, near the community college, there are a lot of people who have, pretty high fences that go around their homes because there's like this need and this desire for, I think, because it's so open out here, like to have some level of privacy, right?
Yeah, well, for me, and I know this isn't really the topic that we're going to, but I've always thought about Santa Fe in this area based on geodetics. It's very Sagittarian Pisces, and from a Pisces perspective, it's monochromatic. Well, there's basically brown and brown and brown and some green. If there's the juniper trees are always there, green. So there's more brown than green, basically. And the houses, for the most part, are versions of adobe, beiges or tans or whatever. So there's this whole kind of unifying element here. And yet there's this whole cultural element to it as well. The culture of Santa Fe, with the Native Americans, the Pueblos, and the deep Hispanic roots with the colonization period. And, so all of that is still very much alive here in Santa Fe. That's my view of Santa Fe.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that because I remember a friend of mine visiting from California, from Santa Cruz, and she was like, everything's brown. And I'm like, but yeah, isn't it wonderful? Like the variations of brown.
Never knew there were so many shades.
Right.
And the same thing with the greens, the trees that do, bring out green leafing or needles are
Cottonwoods change their green. The aspens change their green throughout. We get all those wonderful shades of green, even in the reds, yellows, and oranges like they do on the East Coast. So I think we get those nice things, but there's like this, you talk about the ocean. Yeah, I think it here is very Neptunian and also very Plutonian, but also still, there's that thing of like.
Tell me more about the Plutonian energy that you sense here.
Well, I just feel like, Santa Fe has this way of either bringing people in, drawing them, we call it the land of entrapment for one thing. You try and leave after you've lived here for a while and you can't get, you can't really leave. But
yeah, I know people
like individuals who set up their whole lives to get here. And then literally, like one of my tenants, when I first moved here, they were moving from San Francisco. They had a job set up, all this stuff. They moved into the house. Their car got broken into, lost a job like the first week. It's like there's this way that sometimes Santa Fe also seeks to expel people who aren't ready for the level of bleaching and clearing out. It's the desert. It's the high desert. This is about removing a lot of that stuff that doesn't belong. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I also know people who had a house rented, arrived and left that same day. So, but I also know people on the other hand who have left here almost a half a dozen times and keep coming back.
The land of entrapment.
Well, yes, but there's a higher level to that. And again, it's the Pisces energy. It's the Neptunian energy.
Well, it's hard once there are many of us. I remember moving here, I'm from California, just like you are, the Bay Area. And one of the first things I heard when I moved here was like, we here in Santa Fe hate Texans, but we hate Californians more. And I was like, well, why? And they said, because you guys stay here. And it's true. The Texans usually just come out for part of the time, when it's really too hot or too cold or whatever, they'll come up here and they get away from Texas, but for Californians, a lot of us just left and they moved over here. So it's this interesting setup of wanting to do something that's really different. And then, many of us have moved here. And I think because there is this Piscean, this is an old sea, this is the bottom of an old ocean. So it is very Piscean. And so there's a way that things get washed away that are really unnecessary. And then when you try, I think, to go and live anywhere else, the rules of engagement are so different that it's almost like we're a little bit out of step. We're not people who are doing here in Santa Fe. We're people more who are being, is one aspect I see it as.
Well, I also want to say, because to not give the impression that Californians aren't welcome here. I had never heard what you heard about Californians.
I didn't take it to be.
Matter of fact, I have several friends whose families are rooted here for generations, who have those, what they call what title grants that they gave for some of
the royal land grants.
And these are very dear, caring people. As far as, it's like they consider me a dear friend. I one of them sends me these really cute, what do you call them, texts every now and then.
Is there anything in life that you've ever experienced has been absolute?
Well, no, but I just wanted to say that.
So what that ties into, though, here, and what people don't really understand about here, is this is old native land. And what happens is the Spaniards came in here, conquered, took over the land from the Native Americans, and then a wave of other people from various parts of the country came in and bought the land. And so, there's this interesting thing where these different cultures get along well, but there's also this little bit of animosity. So
that goes back to the Hispanics and the natives and early.
Well, also the Hispanics, to those of us who are white moving from other places who stole the land from their family because we paid for it, because, we came from other places that had different, the quality of, the value of the homes were different. So it made it easier to buy more. And so there was displacement, which is still going on and which needs to be addressed here in Santa Fe. But also, this, while there is a lot of acceptance between different people, like you say, there's also this way in which there is still that separateness. And to me, like, what I wanted to talk about today, because, we've got the sun there, we've got Mars there, and we're getting ready for a new moon today.
No, Thursday,
sorry, in Scorpio. And, I think that's, like Scorpio is all about the transformation. It's all about trying to get rid of these things that are really unnecessary. What I find it happens too here in Santa Fe is there's this level of particularization or discrimination. And I think that's, kind of a higher goal function of Scorpio, is to go like, I don't, like Aaron Sullivan says, one of the things I really love about Scorpio is Scorpio has to get sick and tired of itself, in esoteric.
Scorpio's son too.
She is, so she knows, right? Exactly. And in esoteric astrology, it's fourth ray, so it's harmony through conflict. So it has to do with these dramas. It has to do with these parts of life that, frankly, our society nowadays has really pretty much denigrated almost into a 12th house sort of a position in a way. Maybe because I've got a 12th house Scorpio, I feel that way. But it's like, we don't want to talk about sex. We don't want to talk about death. We don't want to like do childbirth in the way that's really natural. It's all these different weird things. But it's like, now's this time.
Or money. Do we want to talk about money? Because this is very important to Scorpio. And
exactly.
I have house Scorpio.
Thank you. Yeah. And other people's money, right? Like, how do I get to hold my hands on other people's money? Because there can be like this manipulation part. Go ahead.
That's the big conflict with what's going on in our Congress, the United States Congress now, where, two Democratic senators are holding up a reconstruction, if you want to call it that, plan that will rejuvenate and give more life to families and to work jobs. And it's huge. It's in the realm of what FDR and Lyndon LBJ did for this country. It's in that same vein. And yet Sinema from our neighboring state, Arizona, is like saying, well, I don't want to tax, the wealthy of, in the level, in the range that Biden's plan had indicated initially. And you just go like, this is ego. This is Scorpio. This is this new moon. And you're bringing up a point that I think is very valid in looking at this new moon, because on my show, I talk a lot about the moon, and we just did a new moon show last Saturday, which is at moonwise.libsyn.com. As far as podcasts, or go to ksfr.org and look for their podcasts. And it's more personal level, but on a huge level, this new moon and this cycle that coming up is really about our looking at things, coming up with a whole new plan. And I wish that we could just say to Manchin and Cinema, get lost, and please, if anybody's listening to this and has connections with some really level-headed Republicans, and there are some, try to convince them to come over so that we can move on and improve. Because Scorpio is about our evolution. It is about our, growing. And I've said this before, we said this, I think, last week, the major issue with Scorpio is ego. And you and
also, and also the other thing is, what we forget about Scorpio is it's the sign after Libra. People are thinking of Libra as being marriage and the commitment, but it's not. The commitment happens in Scorpio. So what do we have? We have two.
I don't agree with that, but that's all right.
Well, I see it because the truth is like, it's the nitty gritty. It's like when the marriage contract is signed and you start actually really living the relationship and aren't living in the like, oh, you're so beautiful and so fabulous. It's like watching each other in the bathroom, watching the
that's where divorce happens.
Really liking one another. That to me is all the Scorpio stuff. And it's like, but it's also our humanity. And so here we have also, it's funny, we live in this country, we call it democracy, but we have two individuals who are basically saying like, no, and there's really no valid reason. I think it has to really just do with committing to a goal and a value that has something to do with taking the collective resources and sharing them. I think Robin Hood is a bit of a scorpionic figure, right? Steal from the rich and give to the poor. The truth is, the very wealthy know that they should really be paying more. Warren Buffett has been saying this for years. So let the wealthy be taxed. I mean, they're moving stuff into corporations. They don't own anything personally anymore, so you don't have to pay the tax. I mean, there's so many different ways in which our tax code, hello, Scorpio again, has been manipulated, and after our previous president, the IRS has been gutted. So, our government can't even really pay for itself because it really doesn't even have the manpower or people power to like go after the individuals who are really taking advantage of our system.
You're reminding me too of the imagery for Scorpio, not just of the scorpion itself, but like a snake. In order to renew its life, it has to molt. And
scorpions do that too.
Okay. Yeah. And so, here again, it's the ego issue, but it's also anything that's acquainted with that, affiliated with that sign, such as the money. You've got to let it go. Letting it go actually brings you more.
It's one of the fundamental laws of prosperity.
Right? One of the things about letting it go for them, in terms of putting it in trusts or whatever, is it's gaining interest. And so, but they don't have, they still have some control, but they don't have the complete control that they had. So there's a kind of a way in which they're doing that. But on other levels, when it comes to acting out the contracts that I see happen in Libra, or the seventh house, is that they don't get what they want. And how many of them are still, married to the same people? Or how many of them really are happy in their lives? They're trying to fill the void. And
now we have Mars there. And Mars is like, wow, what is my desire? What do I really want? And, all these individuals who have been going on, it's almost going on 2 years now of living in the same household with, unhappy relation. I don't even have any idea what the divorce rate must be, or if people are really working it out. But when you're having to live day in and day out with some of the decisions you might have made in a less than mature or conscious state, the consequences, right?
Yeah, and I imagine that some of them, and without getting into personalities and people in general, they may still be married to the same person, but they have independent. It's not, one of the things that Scorpio wants more than anything else is that complete merger of oneself with another, and that happens physically in sex, but it also happens emotionally with another person, and it also happens in terms of sharing what's on one's mind, what one's dreams are. I mean, that's Neptune's
it's in one's soul, so to speak, right? Because
yeah,
exactly,
exactly.
the depths.
And so to what extent do they have, in order to share, you have to give.
Which for some people and some signs, that really feels like an energetic sacrifice. And sometimes that can be really challenging for individuals. I was so happy to learn, I think it was like just within the last year or so, of this book and whole thing called the 5 Languages of Love. That we all have these different types of things that mean love to us. Like for some of us, it might be about really a person showing up and just sitting there and being present and listening. For another person, it's doing for another person. For another person, it's talking and processing things, these different ways. And it's like, it's so important to realize. And I think that's what astrology always teaches us, is that we all have different kind of needs. And what can appear so overwhelming and so frightening for other individuals is the need of the Scorpio. Because the Scorpio need can be so, if it hasn't been integrated, if it hasn't had its, it needs to shed its skin a few times, because it goes from, as scorpion, snake, eagle to the phoenix, but getting to that point of being anywhere in that cycle of death, life, and rebirth, where you're no longer attached to any part of it, right? It's about going, oh, okay, I'm in this part of the cycle, because that's what you start to understand at that 8th sign, is that, it's like, oh, wow, I got up to that beautiful part with Libra, but it's like, wow, you know what? My images and my ideations of other aren't really true, because other's going to show me not only who they are, but some of the shadow parts of my own self. Right? I think that's what shows up in Scorpio. And it's like, how do we deal with that? How strong is that commitment? If you want to say it happens in Libra, great, because there is, commitment, I think, is a gradual process that is also built along with trust, which takes time, but it's like Scorpio's ready at the drop of the hat to like distrust people. Right across to the side is Taurus saying, hey, you know what? They're going to take it from you. They're here to steal, that really precious thing, because there's also that dragon aspect of energy with Scorpio too, right?
Right. Yeah. Here again, we're getting back to that if their ego isn't being fed, they're out of here. It's sort of like a divorce is a very easy thing, and looking for, something else that feeds their ego.
But also,
this is all the downside of Scorpio.
I would challenge that, because on the higher level, I think what it is when the Scorpio finally understands it isn't really getting its needs met, that's a shedding as well, right? Saying, okay, you know what, I need to shed this relationship. And from the outside, it may appear that someone's just summarily being dismissed. I know in my life, I've had people get upset with me because they say, oh, well, you dismiss people really easy. I'm like, well, I give people lots of chances. But when they reach that final point where it's like, you know what, the truth is, I think you're a wonderful person. I love you, but I can't have you this close in my inner circle of friendship. I need to have you go a little further out. That's where I put down the boundaries. That's where I say, you know what, I can't have you be in or closer, because how you treat me, how you see me is not really feeding and meeting me on the level I need to be who I am. And to me, I'm at a point in my life where I want that mutuality. That's really important to me.
Yeah, well, that there is that dynamic. I don't disagree with any of that so much, because I guess the emphasis has been so far, and my contribution to this dialogue has been on the negative aspects of it, and it's very, because it's very difficult.
Yes.
This is psychological territory.
Yeah.
And some of the psychological territory of Scorpio energy, if it's heavily emphasized in somebody's chart, goes back to one's conception. I mean, this is the realm of psychiatrists, psychologists, soul healers, soul retrieval, sort of
instinctual, right? I mean, that's what I'm kind of hearing. I mean, it's like, there's something that's like right there in the root chakra. It's almost, in a way, it's akin to this idea of original sin, but it's not. It's the sin. When I think of sin, I think of like it's without. When you translate it to Latin or any of the Latin languages, sin just means without. So it's like, to me, it's without spirit, without having lost the connection. And I think Scorpio viscerally feels that loss of connection, and I loved how you touched on that. Is like the merging. People always assume that happens with Pisces, but Scorpio needs that on a really, like, I'm getting goosebumps on it, needs it on a really profound level. And I know you said this is more Sagittarian, but I really think, though I walk through the valley of death, I shall fear no evil. It's like knowing that the people you have with you, when we talked about last week, you said, oh, that sounded very Sagittarian. I thought, to me, that's like it might be Sagittarius Scorpio, but it's like this, but Scorpio wants to have peeps and friends around them who are going to walk through those places in life and are going to still be by their side at the other side, right? There's a profound, the loyalty that Taurus seeks is deepened and tested on a profound level in Scorpio.
It's like if I tell you my deep, dark secrets, right, maybe not necessarily things I've done, but right, things I've thought about doing. If I tell them to you, will you leave me? Right. Will you turn your back on me? Right. Will you deny my existence even? This is Scorpio terrain.
It's the testing, right? It's because I know, like, when I was younger, I would really test people in that way. It's like there was this way I'd almost show my worst side to say, will you love me even in my ugliness? Right. I'm
making me think of that first symbol for Scorpio, the site inside the sightseeing bus. It's like Scorpio has this ability to just about see everything, that's going on. And some of it is, some of it's beautiful. Some of it's lovely. Some of it's like puts you in ecstasy. Some of it is disturbing. And that's where, Scorpio is reluctant. And, keyword astrology, one of the things about Scorpio is often, secretive. And the secret, it's the vulnerability that Scorpio feels that puts that out. I mean, why does a snake slither away or bite? Because it's feeling vulnerable.
Right. But there's also, I think, one of the profound feelings that Scorpio has within itself, and then it has to be resolved, is shame, and the idea of shame. And so I think shame is typically what has in the past kept many of us very quiet. And what we're learning, and the two ruling planets for Scorpio are Mars and Pluto, which are, to me, very, in a way, not easy, but also the most powerful, courageous forces in our solar system for making things happen. So like when you get your will aligned with what it is that you want, Pluto and Mars together on that Scorpio thing, you can manifest anything. That's why I think Scorpio's lives are so interesting. It's like their ability to manifest is, like, oh, what do you want to experience today? Like, oh, I'm ready to have a breakup, or I'm like, whatever it is. It's like there's always some drama, right? There's an aspect of drama that is, until like what Aaron says, like, you go like, I'm kind of full.
That's like last week when we were talking about Mark Zuckerberg, who's a Scorpio.
Right.
He's been able to manifest quite a bit. It's not a question of, there, well, in using that example again, though, it's a question also of manipulation, which Scorpio can be masterful at.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because, you know, the insights that come to a Scorpio mind just think, you know, it's like strategizing and going like, well, if I do this way, I'll get what I want. And it's interesting because I can remember my mother and my sister saying about me, and this was in my childhood at one point. And I was old enough. I mean, I might have been a young teenager at the point where they said this, where, you know, they pointed out that when I want something and I have to ask for it, I do it in a certain way, and they got it. They got, oh, this, and they pointed the behavior out. It was like, I went, what? Wait a minute, they're on to me.
That is such a great thing, because I think that's the funniest thing about those of us who have a Scorpio moon is I think we don't think anyone's paying attention to us in a way, right? It's like, so it's like when someone's like observed us and has gotten our behavior down, it's like, oh, shoot. But it's also so illuminating for us, yes, right? Because it allowed you, because I agree with you. I think, you know, one of the profound things I think about Scorpio is manipulation. It has to be so careful not to manipulate its environment, or to be around people who are strong enough to understand like, oh, that's what you're wanting. You know, because the desire nature is so strong. I mean, Pluto and Mars, I mean, who can say no to those two? I mean, those are like, I mean, Persephone couldn't say no to Hades, right?
Well, this reminds me of how other, you know, other water signs are involved in each other's signs. Right. And this is part of the Neptunian part of Scorpio that actually comes up in this new moon that we have on Thursday is in the middle degrees, the 14th or 15th degree, no, 13th degree of, but that's the decan that is typically in traditional astrology thought of as also a Piscean decanate. So there is this kind of, you know, imprisoning kind of behavior that one is, and in the mythology, she, you know, she had to kind of go along with Hades' agenda because he had control of her.
Until Mama.
You know, sometimes our minds have control of us.
Right.
You know, and our,
you know what's nice? Oh, sorry. Well, what I was going to say is also, you know, what's so powerful in that myth too, in that story, is that the mother, Demeter, basically said, you know what, wintertime until you return. So it was like, you know, the divine, sacred, all-powerful feminine that lies within Scorpio too. It's like, you know, that balancing. I think it's one of the hardest things for men to incorporate within themselves. I don't know how it was for you. I mean, I think overall these scorpionic energies are hard for children to live with, because there's always a revealing, right? We're always, like when I was 11 years old, my mom said, Michael, you have this uncanny ability with your words to know exactly where in the back, to stab in the back and know exactly where to turn so you hit the exact point. I was 11 years old.
That's probably, if we looked at, you know, the finer degrees and analyzed that and stuff, because one of the things too that you were reminding me of with Demeter is, you know, we often associate her with Virgo or Cancer. And well, Cancer is in a trine relationship, an easy connection, a harmonious connection, whereas Virgo is this kind of this kind of sextile connection, and it's sort of an inventive sextile. It's like it's got an Aquarian flavor to it. So there's this ability for I'm sorry, I can't, my cell phone is, I didn't turn it off and I should have left it in the other room. Do you hear it?
I can. No. It's okay. It's a little distracting.
Finally it gave up.
Good.
Yeah, so there's this inventive thing that goes to a certain kind of magical way of thinking.
Mm.
You know, when ideas about something new pop into our minds, and how do we go out about it? And actually this new moon has a lot to do with that kind of energy. Um, you know, we talked about it. Martin Goldsmith and I talked about this. It was aired last week.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
great show. Yeah, I mean, I think for those of you out there, I just think it's a really great time for discernment. I think it's really great for us to be deciding what is it that we really want, what is it we really need, and clearing the way. Mars always has this way, kind of opening things up, and it's since it's a new moon, it's laying fallow for a little bit, right? Kind of like diving deep within oneself. I always like that. The things I think with Scorpio, like, you know, go within or go without, right? The only way out is through. You know, these are the like these are the things that life kind of basically holds us to it in a way that we have to face it. And Scorpio is kind of like, I don't know about you, but every once in a while, me and my Scorpio friends, and we'll just look at each other like, oh, here we go again. You know, it's like once again through the cycle, you know, but that's what it is, so that we can become softened. You know, it's the other thing about Scorpio is it's the iceberg, right? Or the deep frozen pond. You know, it's where things are kind of lying down at the bottom. It's not that there isn't anything going on, still waters run deep, but it's like there's a lot of life in there. I mean, we started in the beginning talking about the brownness and the greenness here in our high desert of Santa Fe, but it's like, you know, it allows for this way for us to be impregnated, so to speak. You know, Scorpio has this way of like doing that and like making us deal with whatever it is that our desire nature is called forth. So, you know, be careful about what you ask for is another, I would think, Mars and Scorpio statement, right? Because like you said, life can be manipulated by us. So, you know, what do you really want? Is it for your highest good? Is it, you know, is it going to make your life better? Is it going to make your relationships happier?
Yeah, well, the things that you're addressing actually have to do with the fixity of the sign of Scorpio. And you know, if you emphasize the sun, maybe it can melt your heart and change your mind. And again, it's that letting go process, because it's in the letting go that the actual path to what you're desiring, to what you're seeking, becomes available, either, you know, as an idea that pops into your head, or as somebody giving you a phone call and saying, you know, that, you know, what you were talking about the other day, I'm willing to give it a try, you know, that sort of thing. And so there's ways of letting go.
The key word, I think, it was like surrender, right? I mean, there's just wonderful, there's grace in surrender. And for those of us, like whenever you're looking for something so intently, you ever notice, because it's about attachment. And, you know, so it's this thing like however much attached you are to it is how harder it's going to be. So, you know, Scorpio has to learn like to be detached. It's getting ready to move into, you know, it's the final quarter, getting ready to go into the final quarter of the astrological wheel. It's really about letting go of our attachments, but it's so hard because we've got so much emotional energy in every single thing we have and we do. Especially those of us with Scorpio moons, you know, so it's like, you know, how do you release it? How do you do it in a way, you know, how do you do it in a way that is meaningful for you and doesn't allow you to be, you know, kind of backed up and constipated? Because the other thing with this, with Scorpio, is it's our elimination, right? And if we don't eliminate, we become full of BS, literally.
We become toxic, actually.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's sort of like, talk about killing yourself from the inside, you know.
It's so funny. I remember it, and I remember reading this joke thing, you know, back in the day when I was growing up, you know, my parents would end up with these like Xerox copies of jokes, you know, that people passed around. This is way before the internet, of course, in the 70s. And one of them was talking about like how the butt kind of rules everything. It's not the butt but where we eliminate, you know, the rectum controls everything. Because when you think about it, when that's backed up, you know, our whole system like you said, it's toxic. You know, we can, anything that happens in the intestinal area, you know, when we aren't dealing with our emotions properly, we end up with stomach aches. We end up with, you know, lots
And
of
you get
diseases.
leaky gut. And
Sorry,
that's
leaky
a
gut.
Virgo connection again.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Because that's another thing. And that's what Scorpio can also teach us. You know, are you eating the right things? Are you putting the right things into your body? Are you surrounding yourself with the right people who are meeting you on the level? I think another thing that happens for Scorpio a lot is we get gaslighted a lot because people don't know how to take us. So it's like, you know, how do we have to be, and maybe, you know, you're at a point in your life where you've gotten rid of so many of those people, but every once in a while you run into people who just like, oh, however it is, like one of the key words we say with Scorpio too is, you know, oh, you're intense. Well, it's like, you know, if someone's,
yeah, the gaslighting is that, you know, it's more Sagittarius, but it's that, and it's funny because, you know, we're really talking a lot about the adjacent signs, because if we let ourselves be vulnerable, we are open to, you know, by not letting go of things and putting things out there, we're open to that kind of manipulation that comes from a Sagittarius view.
or just their input, which can be, you know, I mean, I'm a little bit fortunate because I have Sag rising, but I have a Sag rising mom with Sag sun. So I mean, believe me, there's, you know, that arrow of the Sagittarian really pierces Scorpio in a way that can be incredibly, incredibly painful. And I don't feel like Sagittarius is kind of usually coming from a place of innocence and asking questions, but there's any Scorpio planets involved with that person, doesn't necessarily feel like that all the time.
Thank you for saying that, because my father was a Sagittarius sun. And I just got a whole different view of a few key moments where he would say things to me or ask me something that, you know, it was sort of like I went, you know, no, I mean, it was not
right.
It was not wrong on his part.
Right.
It was just, I did not want to be that vulnerable in terms of listening to his opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain areas. I mean, this is the thing, like where Scorpio is about it. Like, you know, part of it is building these healthy boundaries. I mean, there are certain conversations you don't necessarily want to have with your mom or your dad. It's interesting. You and I both have Sagittarian opposite sex parents, you know, and so like that, you know, for me, you know, like the levels of humiliation and things that I experience on a lot, you know, really pierced me many, many times and was very, very uncomfortable. But that's something I obviously had to work with and heal, and just like maybe you did too, and, you know, and find ways to incorporate it, because, you know, you can't but react.
Exactly. You know, I had a Virgo mother, you know, so it's sort of like caught in the middle of this of this energy where, you know, they just let things go and moved on, and I'm going like, wait a minute.
Can we talk about what happened yesterday, please? And they were like, that's so yesterday. All right. Well, you know, if you guys are loving what we're seeing here, please hit like, hit subscribe, share with your friends. Please comment. Please ask us questions. This has been fun. I mean, Scorpio is a wonderful, deep topic. How do they reach you, Merrylin?
Moonwiseastrology.com. Moonwiseastrology, all one word.com.
Perfect. And people can reach me at Coremichael, CORE, Michael.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us all. Have a wonderful week, and good luck walking through the valley of death this week.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.